My buddy Doug Gottlieb, the Doug Gottlieb Show After Ours. He is joining us, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. It is interesting, Doug, as I watched The Last Dance. I said earlier, I don't believe in stay in your lane. Jason Whitlock loves politics, and that, I'm fine with that. But I do think you have a right to choose your lane, and I don't think you should discuss things unless you're fairly well-versed on them. And Michael never showed any interest in politics and didn't want to get into politics, although he did donate to a political campaign. I was okay, Mike, not walking it back last night. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I thought it was really good food for thought, and the idea is, look, I'm not into politics. I didn't want to get into it. I also think there's a couple other elements to it in that, unless you're really close personal friends with a guy, you don't know who you're politically getting in bed with, right? Yeah. So, I think the idea that, because he was running against Jesse Helms, because of the area that he grew up in, because he was a black candidate, everyone assumed he had to support him. I would say that the other part is, it's kind of like LeBron James. You don't want to take an L when your name's not even on the ballot. Right? LeBron James supports Hillary Clinton. She loses. So he loses even though he didn't really run. He just offered his support, even lost in the state of Ohio. The only part I would differ with you, and I generally agree. You can be apolitical if you're just apolitical. Like, some people just aren't into it. Yeah. And it was a different mid-'80s. It's a different time than it is now. But the only part I'll disagree is that, look, it's different if you're black. It's different if you're Jewish, and a candidate is Jewish running against some far right wing anti-Semitic, right? So I think, if somebody's really anti-Israel and it's in my neck of the woods. I mean, the local high school had a party last year where there's the red Solo cups in like a swastika. I'm offended anyway, but then when I find out it's in my neck of the woods, it becomes disgusting, and you want to chase down these parents and like, what are you doing? Yeah, this is not what we should be teaching our kids. Anyway, the point is, I do think it's different if you're black than if you're just me or you in any sort of other election year. Yeah, no, I Joy and I were talking about this during the break. It's I guess I'm just defending athletes. I don't like forcing athletes who have to work so hard and have so many obstacles to overcome. Then you're forcing them into lanes, and I don't like it. It bothers me, and I do get what you're saying. But, God, most of these athletes, I mean, you were an athlete. Think about the hours and time Doug Gottlieb spent, and you didn't grow up with any money. All these athletes, most of them grow up, they have to work their ass off their entire life, and they're not as politically engaged because, for God's sake, they're in a tunnel of basketball, football, or baseball, and then we ask them to be courageous politically, and it's like, God, can we just accept and love these athletes for what they give us, which is unbelievable entertainment and passion? And so maybe I'm being... The other part, Colin, sorry to interrupt. The other part is that it is sometimes really hard. And he did mention racism growing up in Wilmington earlier in one of the earlier episodes. But I will tell you that it also, when you live in the bubble of being an athlete, you don't, racism feels very, very different. Now, look, I'm not black, so I can't tell you what it felt like to be Michael Jordan. But, I don't, like, you joke about it a lot more. You just like, I feel like inside the insular walls of locker rooms, racism doesn't really exist, right? Either you can play, you can't play, either you're friends or you're not friends. Yeah, players say that all the time, Right, so it's really hard to understand real-world topics because you're like, I don't even know, I can't even conceptualize a world in which somebody doesn't like somebody else because of the color of their skin, right? I mean, stereotypes do exist in sports, black guys and white guys, but it's not with the undertones of hatred. So it is a hard thing. And, like, look, here's an easier way to make kind of the same point about living in this bubble or a tunnel is ask any of these guys. Like, one of the reasons former professional athletes struggle to be sports commentators, like generalists like you and I are, is because when they're playing, that's all they're concerned about. Yeah. They don't even know about the rest of the league, per se. Oh, no. They can only tell you about their team, and they don't know about baseball or football. Yeah, no. Any of these professional athletes, you say, well, when I was playing it, they're not really a fan of another football team or a basketball team. You don't have time. You don't have the bandwidth.
No, I've talked to athletes, and I've been at times shocked by how focused athletes are on their game and know very little about, and I'm not going to mention names, but I've worked with people at both networks, some there, some still gone. They are so into themselves and their body and their team, they don't have a macro view of their sport, and I'm often shocked by it, so it is an interesting point. As far as the gambling on Michael, so again, here I am supporting Michael on this. If you make $50,000 a minute, losing $50,000 to a gentleman named Slim on a golf course is not the same as, a regular guy losing $50,000. I think Michael looked at gambling as, going to a casino with his dad is a way away from the Elvis-like stress of being Michael Jordan. And I think a lot of it's nonsense. How does it land for you?
Well, I'm sure at the time he felt like it was nonsense, and maybe the Atlantic City trip was overdone. He didn't play that well down the stretch. I do think it's interesting that you'll get people to say, well, if LeBron James went through the sort of criticism of Michael Jordan, like, what are we kidding? Like, Michael Jordan was often criticized before he won a championship, couldn't win the big one, couldn't beat the Pistons, and then when he did win championships, well, he's playing too much golf or he was gambling too much. This is what we do. But there's never been a gambling addict ever who has thought he had a problem, right? It's all been entertainment or I have a competitive problem. And the issue with gambling is that when you lose money to dudes whose nickname is Slim and launder money, now all of a sudden weird things happen, like your dad gets killed, beside a road on a highway by two guys that don't have a previous record of any sort of violence, right? Like those things kind of get weird. It's one thing to lose money in a casino. It's a whole other thing to just start losing, gobs and gobs of money on a golf course or in a back alley blackjack hand. So do I think he's a gambling addict? I don't know. But the idea, anyone who's ever lost a bunch of money is like, well, I'm just too competitive. I just had a bad run on it. So I think I commend them for at least discussing the gambling. But it is a little bit of the elephant in the room, which is like, okay, I get that you're a competitive dude. You're kind of compulsive in terms of how you work. You're compulsive in terms of how you play golf. You're compulsive in a lot of things.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me you're not compulsive as a gambler? I don't buy that one either.
Well, it's almost like, think about this. So is alcoholism. So I can remember going as a kid to a meeting with my mom about my father. And I remember reading a brochure, and they said, if you drink just once a month, you could still be an alcoholic. If you depend on that. And I remember thinking, wow, but talk about of variables with alcoholism. If you drank a cocktail every night with your wife over dinner, a glass of wine, didn't wreck your liver, didn't wreck your career, you retired early, and by the way, you died at 82 years old. You could make the argument, well, that's alcoholism. And I'm like, Michael's argument was, it ain't wrecking anything. It ain't hurting my basketball. It's not hurting my net worth. So I do think kind of the result of gambling or drinking, a lot of it's based on result. It hasn't hurt Michael's career at all. So is he just an alpha who competes? Like, let's be honest about gambling.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's not the reason he got divorced, but we don't think, but he did get divorced. He makes so much money. Maybe he's impervious to it. Maybe he can't. Maybe whatever high stakes it is. I mean, look, Charles Barkley is basically,
he loves gambling.
Huh?
He loves gambling.
Yes, and the thing about they're as my coach Eddie Sutton would say, they don't build all those buildings in Vegas because the house loses money, right? That's,
right.
That's so anyone who's like, no, I'm up, like, yeah, right, fine. That was just entertainment cost. So, I mean, maybe he makes so much money it doesn't matter, but I mean, dude like to bet on everything, and it is a hard when you're competitive and you're compulsive. The idea that you can find balance and you can make it work. I mean, I get it. He's a 3 comma guy. 3 comma guys, I guess you can do it, but I would guess that 99.9% of people that have a gambling problem say, I don't have a game problem. I'm just ultra competitive.
Yeah, you're probably right. Hey, by the way, the dream team. We got 2 minutes left.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like Michael was the only guy that hated Isiah Thomas.
Well, that's because, and it's not the Isiah Thomas documentary, but it's like, do we have to go back when Isiah said, and he was echoing Dennis Rodman, but it was Isiah Thomas who said, if Larry Bird was a black guy, he'd be just another guy, right? It was Isiah Thomas who was best friends with Magic Johnson. Magic gets HIV, and Isiah starts telling people that Magic might be gay, right? So, like, these are things when there's a big three in your sport, okay, that are, Magic and Bird saved the league, and Jordan took it to another level, and none of them want you on the team.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly accomplished guy, and this is like one of the things that you sacrifice if you're going to wear the black hat and be the bad guy, right? It worked for them to win 2 championships, but the downside to it is nobody liked him. And, Isiah Thomas had a marvelous career, and you could make an argument that he's the greatest point guard, pure point guard of that generation, maybe even more so than Magic because he was more of a scorer than Magic. You probably put Magic ahead of him. Maybe he's second or whatever. But, he still doesn't know. He still thinks Michael's the bad guy. And I'm sure Michael is the bad guy. Everyone knew. And he didn't even talk about the fact that he organized the freeze out of Michael his first year in the All-Star game.
Yes.
So there was a lot more to it than just he ducked away from shaking hands in Game 7.
Yeah.
Hey, last thing, Colin. Like, look, Cam Newton's not in the league because Cam Newton still, like fans, thinks he's Cam Newton of 5 years ago. Cam Newton's had ankle surgery. He's had shoulder surgery. He doesn't throw the football the same. And no one believes at this point that he's a starter.
Right.
And he's not willing to take, whether it's $1 million that Jameis did or $3 million that Dalton just took. Like, he thinks this is one of the reasons that Colin Kaepernick couldn't find a home. It wasn't just that he was kneeling. It was, hey, you don't have the places that should champion you that you worked with before. Brandon Beane and McDermott in Buffalo, maybe if Josh Allen has a bad year, like they worked with him before, but they haven't reached out. And the Redskins, who still are carrying the albatross of the Alex Smith contract, but as of now, they haven't reached out. So when those two don't reach out to you, the Panthers take Teddy Bridgewater instead of you. You're damaged goods. Nobody can evaluate you, and you think you're a starter. Everybody else thinks you're a backup, and you're unwilling to take backup money or have a backup conversation. He's just going to have to sit and wait and hope the right guy gets hurt and he gets a phone call.
Good stuff, Doug Gottlieb. Good talking to you, buddy.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.